Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Danielle again with another key to health and wellness. So let's get started immediately. Let me share my PowerPoint and we'll get started with key number two. So, welcome to key number two. We're going to talk about emotions. If you haven't seen key number one, go back to it. I talk about our physical bodies. This one is to talk about our emotional states, and it's part of the Do It Yourself Health webinar series. So, again, a holistic approach means you have more than one belief. You don't just do one thing, you try to do several different things for your health. You don't just believe that, if you go to a seminar, all your emotional problems will fall down. No, maybe you need therapy, maybe you need a coach, maybe you need a mentor, maybe you need to read some books. Those are all different pillars for your health. So if something doesn't work, then you still have the other pillars to hold on to. And again, these are the 5 keys I developed over the 45 last years. Take care of your physical body. That was our first webinar that I prepared. Today, we're going to talk about emotional freedom. Next one will be on mental fitness training, imaginary, and the power of your mind in healing. The last one will be on love, life, and miracles. So let's delve into key number two. Emotional freedom. What is emotional freedom? First of all, what are emotions? Emotions are really just a type of energy that is in motion. When something happens to you, your body sends a bunch of chemicals to your brain, gives you a message, but it must circulate. When you lose somebody, it's extremely painful. You have to go through a process of grieving. You have to let that circulate. When somebody mistreats you, again, you cannot have that stuck in your body. That's eventually going to hurt you. So you need to get these emotions to circulate. Stagnant emotions cause diseases. And I was talking to a group yesterday talking about the adverse childhood experience study that was done between 95 and 97 with a bunch of Kaiser patients, 17,421, I believe, who were followed for 15 years. And those who had adverse childhood experiences and a much higher incidence of alcoholism, drugs, smoking, suicide rate, and especially chronic diseases. They were in the hospital by the age of 50, depending how many adverse childhood experiences they had. But it's not because you had problem in your childhood or even trauma later on in life that it has to lead you to disease. There are all kinds of techniques nowadays to painlessly remove these traumas out of your energy system. And the same trauma does not affect people the same way. I remember a client of mine in California. Her husband loved snakes, especially rattlesnakes. When he was a kid, he used to go find rattlesnakes and he would put them in a freezer so he could pose them and take pictures. And obviously, his mom was not too happy when she opened the freezer or refrigerator, but he loved to do that. He was not afraid of snakes. Now, compare the same experience with my grandmother. Just seeing the picture of a snake in a magazine, and she just throw the magazine away. She would, close the magazine. It was horrible. She was in a panic just looking at a picture. So snakes, two same kind of incident, but totally different reaction. And these reaction come from different experiences we had prior to that. We're going to talk more about it when we talk about key number 4. So EFT, emotional freedom technique, of my own cocktail of the different tapping technique, is called freedom, which means freedom and release of emotional and energetic disturbance or mental blocks. What does it entail? Let's first talk about the developer of EFT, Gary Craig. What did he say about these tapping techniques? They often work when nothing else will, and I can testify to that. They're usually rapid, that's true, long-lasting, and especially gentle. What is great with EFT is you don't have to relive the trauma. I mean, who wants to go back on the battlefield or back on the rape? You don't have to with these techniques. No drugs or equipment involved, easily learned by anyone. I taught these techniques to my 5-year-old son, and he knew how to apply them. And they can be self-applied. Once you learn this technique, you can do a lot yourself. And I just had a client who learned them when I was teaching a class at UNLV for senior citizen. She practiced them, but all of a sudden she was faced with a quick challenge. She had to go for a medical procedure, and she kind of was in a panic. And she called me and said, "Can you help me go through that?" So I worked with her for about an hour and 20 minutes, very gently. And she sent me an email and said it was a piece of cake. I didn't have any feeling of panic, and even my daughter did not recognize me. At the time, she was 72 years old. So that was a great way of going through a procedure that she was so panicked about. And these, again, they work very quickly, especially if you've been trained with them, which doesn't take very long. So you probably heard about acupuncture. They stick needles in you and it's very effective. Well, in that you do not have to stick needle with people. You use the tip of your finger to tap on some points while you focus on something that is disturbing you. Now, if you've had trauma in your childhood or, even being raped or being in a war zone later on, maybe you want to work with a therapist to help you through that because you don't have to relive it. But things change when you go to the root cause of a problem. So let a therapist who is trained in, they've called energy psychology, meridian-based energy psychotherapy. I use a lot the EFT, emotional freedom technique, BSFS, Be Set Free Fast. Those are different tapping techniques that work extremely well, rapidly, and are very gentle. So you tap for freedom. What can you tap on? It initially started with people having phobias, a phobia of water, particularly, where a lady was cured in a few minutes of a water phobia she's had her whole life. And then it went to, fear of speaking, fear of death, fear of snakes, and all kind of different fear of phobia. When I have my workshop and I'm in a high rise, usually have people in my group that are afraid to go in an elevator or afraid of height. Those are two fear or phobia that are very easy to correct. Some are not that easy, but I take people in an elevator and we go way up on top. I had a fear of elevator and of height. So I know it works because I can do it now. It works again for panic attack. If you've been abused, to lessen. You're still going to remember the abuse, but it's not going to be emotionally traumatizing. Addictions, you can usually remove an addiction, like somebody who wants to smoke, they can remove that urge to smoke or urge to eat, but then you need to go deeper and find out why they have it. Then it went into sports performance, and I worked with people who were horseback riding. I worked with a young lady in volleyball and kids in Aikido. And it's not like, for instance, Aikido, you're going to be all of a sudden a black belt. No, but if when you pass your test, that young lady I was talking about was so afraid of passing a test. So I took her aside, we did some of the tapping, and she, went through her test, had no problem. The lady on horseback riding was very nervous, and obviously so was was her horse. So we did some tapping on her, and it worked fine. Actually, if I remember well, she won first prize. The horse calmed down as she calmed down. And then creativity and business. People doing tapping remove the blocks to doing better business or being creative, writing a book, etc. So these tapping techniques have been used for many, many different things. And it's not just tapping and emotion, it also gives you physical changes. Rebecca's blood was badly clumped, and they took a little bit of blood, put it under a live microscope, and saw that her red blood cells were clumped. And she did some tapping, and you can see they starting to detach. And after a few more minutes of tapping techniques, the clumping was totally gone. And high blood pressure has gone down, diabetes has gone down, cholesterol's gone down, MS. There was one lady who did the tapping there with chronic disease. You need a lot of persistence. So she did tapping for 2 years and got out of her wheelchair using tapping because What happens with chronic disease? It's a lot of time, a lot of trauma that have accumulated, those emotions that have never been allowed to get out of the body. So you get to them one after the other, and it liberates you. And you can see on functional MRIs that the brain also changes. It's quite amazing to see. You have all these things, these sensor put on your brain, and you have a picture of what's happening in your brain, and you do the tapping, and all of a sudden you see a shift in your brain. It's quite amazing to see. So again, a journey of 1,000 miles, a step-by-step approach, like you do one step a month. Maybe a month you decide to work on your fear of something, the next on an addiction, or if you want to go faster, work one step at a time every week. It's amazing how many changes. In 10 years, you'd have changed 520 different things in your life. And that spells success. So write down right now, what are you going to do to change your emotional state? And you can get a free manual if you write me. So ask for it. You go on my website, qhe21.com, scroll down on my front page and send me a message. Tell me, hey, I'd like to have the EFT free manual. Also go on my events page, because I teach classes and workshops and webinars and have online courses, and I keep updating that page. So if you're interested to take a class, just check it out. All right. And thank you for your attention, and I'll see you on key number 3.